In the year 2145, humanity stood at the precipice of a new era, its insatiable thirst for resources driving exploration beyond the confines of its home planet. Space travel had become a routine endeavor, with fleets of mining vessels scouring distant planets for precious minerals and energy sources. The Prometheus, a state-of-the-art mining ship, was one such vessel, crewed by a diverse team of specialists, each eager to contribute to the grand narrative of human expansion. Captain Alara Voss, a seasoned leader with a reputation for making tough decisions, stood on the bridge, gazing at the swirling nebulae outside the viewport. The ship hummed with life, the crew bustling about, oblivious to the gathering storm. Alara's mind raced as she reviewed the mission parameters. They were assigned to an uncharted planet, designated only as X-19, located on the fringes of the galaxy, a place few had dared to approach. Preliminary scans showed promising mineral deposits, but something in the data felt off, as if the planet itself was hiding its true nature. As they entered the planet's atmosphere, the ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared, and the crew scrambled to regain control. "What the hell is happening?" shouted Javier, the ship's engineer, as he wrestled with the malfunctioning controls. The view outside transformed from the mesmerizing colors of space to the ominous, murky clouds of X-19. The ship spiraled out of control, and Alara's heart raced as she braced for impact. The crash landing was catastrophic. The Prometheus plowed through the dense underbrush and skidded to a halt, its hull crumpled and smoking. Dazed and disoriented, the crew staggered out into the toxic atmosphere, a thick, green haze that felt alive. The planet's surface was a twisted landscape of jagged rocks and bioluminescent flora that pulsed with an eerie glow, casting long shadows that danced unnaturally. "Is everyone accounted for?" Alara called, her voice hoarse. As they gathered, a sense of dread settled over the crew like a suffocating blanket. The air was heavy, charged with an unsettling energy that prickled at their skin. The planet felt hostile, as if it were watching them. They set up a perimeter, establishing a temporary camp around the wreckage of the Prometheus. Tension hung in the air, each crew member glancing nervously at the darkening horizon. "We need to assess the damage and find a way to signal for help," Alara said, her voice steady despite the rising panic. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, a chilling silence enveloped them, broken only by the distant rustling of unseen creatures. As night fell, the atmosphere shifted. Shadows elongated and twisted, and the whispers began, soft, unintelligible murmurs that seemed to echo from the depths of the forest. The crew exchanged worried glances, each feeling the weight of an unseen presence lurking just beyond the flickering light of their campfires. Javier, ever the skeptic, scoffed at the sounds. "It's just the wind. We're in an alien environment. Our minds are playing tricks on us." But the others were not so easily convinced. As darkness deepened, one of the crew, a young botanist named Mia, wandered too far into the woods, drawn by the pulsating glow of the flora. "Mia!" Alara shouted, but it was too late. The shadows seemed to envelop her, and a blood-curdling scream pierced the night. The crew rushed toward the sound, but all that remained was silence and the faint glow of the plants, now eerily pulsing in rhythm with their racing hearts. Panic set in as they searched for Mia, but the forest seemed to conspire against them, twisting and turning, leading them away from her cries. The crew's unity began to fray, suspicion and fear taking root. Who or what was out there? The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if the very planet was beckoning them deeper into its embrace. In the following days, the crew faced both the harshness of their environment and the creeping terror of the unknown. Supplies dwindled, and their attempts to repair the ship were futile. It was as if X-19 itself had conspired to keep them there. They grew restless, and the tension mounted, the air thick with unspoken fears. Each night brought more unsettling phenomena. Shadows danced just out of sight, and the whispers morphed into guttural growls that echoed through the darkness. One afternoon, while scavenging for food, they stumbled upon the remnants of an ancient civilization. Crumbling stone structures, adorned with intricate carvings, hinted at a once thriving culture now lost to time. But the carvings told a grim story, warnings of a predator, a terror that hunted the inhabitants of the planet, leaving nothing but death in its wake. The crew gathered around the faded murals, a sense of foreboding washing over them. What had they awakened? As they retreated to the safety of the camp, the realization began to settle in. They were not alone. The air felt charged with anticipation, as if the planet itself was alive and its inhabitants were watching. Panic morphed into paranoia, and the crew found themselves turning on one another. The whispers grew more aggressive, punctuated by the sounds of movement just beyond their camp. One by one, crew members began to vanish without a trace, swallowed by the darkness. Desperation turned to horror as they uncovered the truth. The aliens were not merely hunting them. They were a collective consciousness, a hive mind that thrived on fear and pain. Each disappearance was not just a loss. It was an act of assimilation, a grotesque transformation that turned victims into part of the alien brood. As the reality of their situation set in, the remaining crew members realized that escape was no longer an option. They had become prey in a deadly game, and the stakes were higher than any of them could have imagined. With each passing hour, the dark influence of X-19 tightened its grip, forcing the crew to confront not just the external threat, but their own internal demons. As the line between sanity and madness blurred, they would have to fight not only for their lives, but for their very humanity. The struggle for survival had become a fight against the primordial terror that lurked in the shadows, a terror that fed off their fear, growing stronger with each heartbeat. In this harrowing tale of survival and dread, the true nature of the alien presence would reveal itself, leading to a final confrontation that would test the limits of the crew's resolve. As they faced the darkness together, they would uncover the horrific truth of what it meant to be hunted, and the lengths they would go to escape the clutches of a malevolent force that had claimed countless lives before them. The planet, once an untouched paradise of resources, had transformed into a nightmare, a dead world teeming with horrors beyond imagination. And as they fought to survive, the question loomed: would they escape, or would they become just another chapter in the chilling history of X-19? Chapter 1. The Descent. In the year 2145, the vastness of space had become a familiar frontier for humanity, a canvas painted with the ambition of exploration and exploitation. Mankind's reach extended far beyond the cradle of Earth, driven by an insatiable hunger for resources. This relentless pursuit led to the creation of the Prometheus, a state-of-the-art mining vessel, and its crew was a mix of seasoned veterans and eager newcomers, all drawn by the promise of discovery and wealth. Captain Alara Voss stood on the bridge, her hands resting on the control console as she surveyed the view. Stars twinkled against the black void, a reminder of both the beauty and danger that lay beyond. The ship was en route to X-19, a planet shrouded in mystery and potential. Initial scans indicated rich deposits of rare minerals, but there was something unsettling in the data. It flickered ominously on the screen, a warning that went unheeded in the face of greed and ambition. "Prepare for descent," Alara commanded, her voice steady, masking the unease that gnawed at her. She could feel the tension in the air. The crew was restless, excitement mixing with apprehension. Javier, the ship's engineer, was busy adjusting the thrusters, his brow furrowed in concentration. As they broke through the atmosphere, the ship jolted violently. Alarms blared, and the lights flickered ominously. "What's happening?" Alara shouted, gripping the console as the vessel bucked beneath them. "Malfunction in the stabilizers." Javier shouted back, sweat glistening on his forehead. The view outside transformed from the serene beauty of stars to chaotic clouds swirling with dark fury. Panic rippled through the crew, but Alara's resolve hardened. "Brace for impact," she ordered. The Prometheus plummeted toward the planet's surface, the controls slipping from Javier's grasp. The ship spiraled out of control, and the crew clung to their seats, hearts racing as the ground rushed up to meet them. Alara's mind raced, calculating their trajectory, assessing their chances. There was nothing more they could do. They were at the mercy of fate. With a bone-jarring crash, the ship collided with the ground, the impact reverberating through the hull. Metal screamed as the vessel skidded across the unforgiving terrain before finally coming to a halt. Dust and debris filled the air, and the crew struggled to regain their bearings. Alara coughed, the acrid taste of smoke choking her throat. "Status report," she barked, shaking off the disorientation. One by one, the crew emerged from the wreckage, dazed but alive. They stood together, staring at the alien landscape that surrounded them, a chaotic mix of jagged rocks and bizarre plant life glowing faintly in the dim light. "Is everyone okay?" Alara asked, her voice steady despite the chaos. The crew nodded, their faces pale, eyes wide with shock. Javier, still clutching his tools, looked around, his expression shifting from panic to determination. "We need to assess the damage," he said, glancing back at the mangled ship, "and find a way to signal for help." Alara nodded, but a gnawing unease settled in her stomach. The air was thick with an unsettling energy, and the unfamiliar flora pulsed with a soft, eerie glow, as if alive. "Let's set up a perimeter," she instructed, her instincts kicking in. They gathered their supplies, moving cautiously as they established a camp around the wreckage. As night fell, the alien landscape transformed. Shadows lengthened, and an eerie silence enveloped them, broken only by the distant rustling of unseen creatures. The crew huddled around their makeshift fire, the flickering flames casting grotesque shapes on the surrounding trees. Alara couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, as if the very planet had eyes, lurking just beyond the light. "Do you hear that?" Mia, the ship's botanist, whispered, her voice trembling. The others turned, straining to listen. A low murmur drifted through the air, unintelligible yet chilling. Alara felt a shiver run down her spine. "It's just the wind," Javier scoffed, though his bravado felt fragile. "We're in an alien environment. Our minds are playing tricks on us." But as the hours dragged on, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. The crew exchanged worried glances, each feeling the weight of an unseen presence lurking just beyond the firelight. Alara tried to maintain a sense of control, but the atmosphere felt charged with an impending dread. "Let's check the perimeter," Alara suggested, her tone firm. They ventured into the darkness, flashlights cutting through the thick fog that clung to the ground. The air was cool and damp, and the glow of the surrounding flora pulsed rhythmically, casting an otherworldly light on their path. As they moved deeper into the forest, a sense of foreboding settled over them. The shadows seemed to dance, and every rustle sent their hearts racing. "Stay close," Alara warned, her instincts screaming that something was terribly wrong. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream shattered the silence. It echoed through the trees, piercing the night air like a dagger. "Mia!" Alara shouted, her heart racing. The crew froze, fear gripping them as they strained to locate the source of the sound. "Come on," Javier urged, pushing forward, but Alara hesitated, dread pooling in her stomach. "We need to stick together," she shouted, but it was too late. The group was already scattering, drawn by the echo of Mia's cry. They sprinted toward the sound, fear propelling them forward, but the forest twisted around them, disorienting their sense of direction. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices that seemed to taunt them. "Mia!" Alara called again, panic rising in her throat. Finally, they reached a clearing, and the air hung heavy with an unnatural stillness. The glow of the flora illuminated the ground, revealing what remained of Mia, a lifeless body, contorted and grotesque, as if something had been feasting upon her. Alara's breath hitched in her throat, horror crashing over her like a wave. "Get back!" she screamed, instinctively pushing the others away. The crew stood frozen in shock, their faces pale, eyes wide with terror. "We need to leave now," Alara ordered, her voice breaking the spell of fear that held them captive. They stumbled back toward the camp, the weight of Mia's loss heavy on their hearts. The whispers faded into the darkness, replaced by an oppressive silence that threatened to swallow them whole. Back at the wreckage, they gathered, fear and confusion swirling in their minds. "Something is out there," Alara said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "We need to keep watch. We have to protect ourselves." The crew nodded, but the sense of unity was fraying. As night deepened, the air felt charged with an unseen tension. Shadows flickered at the edge of their camp, and the whispers returned, now sharper, more menacing. They huddled around the dying fire, eyes darting to the darkness, every crack of a branch sending them into a frenzy. Hours passed, and exhaustion weighed heavy on their eyelids. Just as they thought they might find a moment of peace, another crew member vanished into the night. This time it was Marcus, the ship's medic. One moment he was there, the next a scream echoed through the trees, and then silence. The remaining crew members looked at each other, terror etched on their faces. "What the hell is going on?" Javier gasped, his voice trembling. Alara felt the walls closing in around her, the weight of their situation pressing down like a physical force. "We need to barricade ourselves," she urged, fear giving way to determination. "We can't let whatever is out there take us one by one." They gathered debris from the wreckage, piling it against the ship's entrance, creating a makeshift barrier. As they worked, the whispers grew louder, drowning out their thoughts, filling their minds with dread. Alara felt her grip on reality slipping, the line between fear and madness blurring. Night bled into dawn, but the sun brought no comfort. The crew was on edge, every sound magnified, every shadow fraught with danger. They sat in a circle, eyes darting to the edges of their makeshift camp, waiting for the inevitable next attack. Days turned into a nightmarish blur. Supplies dwindled and hope began to fade. The planet seemed to conspire against them, using their fear to fuel its darkness. The whispers morphed into guttural growls, echoing through the trees, a primal sound that sent chills down their spines. Alara felt the weight of responsibility crushing her. She had led them into this nightmare, and now they were paying the price. The crew was fracturing, paranoia setting in as they turned on one another. Javier's skepticism had withered into fear, and Mia's death haunted them like a specter. They discovered the remnants of an ancient civilization buried beneath the surface, crumbling structures adorned with strange carvings that hinted at a once thriving culture. But the murals told a grim story, warning of a predator that hunted the inhabitants of the planet, leaving nothing but death in its wake. "Look at these," Alara said, tracing her fingers over the carvings. "They knew something we didn't. We've awakened something here." The realization settled like a lead weight in their stomachs. The true nature of their situation began to unfold. They were not just lost, they were prey, trapped in a deadly game. The hunt was on, and the planet was alive with malevolence. As the days dragged on, the crew's unity dissolved into chaos. They were no longer a team. They were survivors, fighting not just against the elements but against the primal terror that lurked in the shadows. The whispers grew louder, the growls more insistent, and the line between sanity and madness began to blur. The once bustling crew of the Prometheus was now reduced to a handful of desperate souls, clinging to the remnants of hope. They were trapped in a waking nightmare, and the planet itself seemed to revel in their suffering. With each passing moment, they could feel the darkness closing in, the hunt drawing nearer. Alara knew they had to act. They needed to confront the reality of their situation, to fight back against the darkness that threatened to consume them. But as they prepared for what lay ahead, one question loomed large in her mind. Would they emerge as victors, or would they become just another chapter in the chilling history of X-19? Chapter 2. The First Encounter. The oppressive atmosphere of X-19 hung heavy over the remaining crew of the Prometheus, each breath a reminder of their dire predicament. The days had turned into a blur of anxiety and fear, and the shadows that danced just beyond their camp felt alive, pulsating with an energy that was both alien and terrifying. Alara Voss, the captain, had always prided herself on her ability to maintain order in chaos, but now she found herself grappling with the unraveling threads of her crew's sanity. The camp was a fragile fortress, cobbled together from the wreckage of their ship, but it provided little comfort. Each night, the whispers grew louder, seeping into their dreams and twisting their thoughts. The loss of Mia and Marcus had left a palpable void, and the specter of their fates loomed over them like a dark cloud. Alara could sense the tension among the crew, the way their eyes darted to the tree line, as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows at any moment. "Today, we need to gather supplies," she declared one morning, her voice firm despite the uncertainty gnawing at her. "We can't survive on what little we have left." The crew nodded, their expressions a mix of resignation and fear. They knew they had to push forward, but the thought of venturing into the unknown filled them with dread. Javier, the ship's engineer, stepped forward, his brow furrowed in concern. "And what if we encounter whatever took Mia and Marcus?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken fears. "We need to confront this," Alara replied, trying to inject a sense of courage into her words. "We can't let fear dictate our actions. We have to reclaim our lives." She met each of their gazes, willing them to understand the gravity of their situation. They were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting to reclaim their humanity. With their supplies dwindling, the crew set out into the dense forest, armed with makeshift weapons and a determination to find food and resources. The trees towered above them, their trunks gnarled and twisted, and the air was thick with humidity, clinging to their skin. As they moved deeper into the foliage, the eerie glow of the bioluminescent plants illuminated their path, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to shift and writhe. Alara led the way, her senses heightened, acutely aware of the oppressive silence that surrounded them. The usual sounds of wildlife were conspicuously absent, replaced by a suffocating stillness that made her skin crawl. Each step felt like a violation of an unspoken law, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were intruders in a world that was not their own. Over there, Mia pointed, her voice tinged with excitement. She had spotted a cluster of strange, vibrant fruits hanging from a vine. The colors were unlike anything they had seen before, brilliant blues and purples that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. We should check those out. Alara hesitated, a sense of foreboding creeping in. Be careful, she cautioned as they approached the fruit. We don't know what they might do. Javier, however, was already reaching for one, his hunger overriding his caution. As he plucked a fruit from the vine, a low growl reverberated through the trees, sending a shiver down Alara's spine. The sound came from deep within the forest, primal and menacing. Did you hear that? She whispered, her heart racing. The crew froze, eyes wide with fear, their instincts screaming at them to flee. Javier dropped the fruit, the vibrant colors fading to a dull gray as it hit the ground. We need to get back, he said, his voice trembling. They turned to leave, but the growl intensified, echoing through the trees, now accompanied by rustling sounds that made the hairs on the back of Alara's neck stand on end. Run! Alara shouted, and the crew bolted back the way they had come, adrenaline surging through their veins. The branches whipped at their faces as they sprinted, the forest closing in around them. The growling followed them, a relentless predator in pursuit. They burst into the clearing where their camp was set up, breathless and wide-eyed. What was that? Mia gasped, her voice shaky. Alara quickly scanned the perimeter, her instincts honed from years of command telling her to prepare for an attack. I don't know, she admitted, her heart pounding. But we can't let our guard down. They huddled together, their breaths coming in quick gasps, the adrenaline still coursing through their bodies. Just as they began to regain their composure, a chilling sound echoed from the darkness, a guttural growl that resonated deep within their chests. It was closer this time, and the crew exchanged terrified glances. We need to reinforce the camp, Alara said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. We can't let whatever that is get to us. As they worked, the growling continued, a constant reminder of the danger lurking just beyond the light. Javier and Mia gathered debris to fortify their makeshift barricades, while Alara kept watch, her heart racing with each sound that echoed through the trees. The shadows seemed to writhe and pulse, and she felt the weight of 1,000 eyes watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. Just as they finished reinforcing the perimeter, a figure emerged from the darkness, tall and skeletal, its elongated limbs moving with an unnatural grace. The crew gasped, fear flooding their veins. The creature stood at the edge of the clearing, its skin glistening in the faint light, revealing a grotesque visage with hollow eyes that stared into their souls. Get back! Alara shouted, instinctively moving to shield her crew. The creature let out a blood-curdling screech that echoed through the forest, a sound that reverberated with primal terror. The crew stumbled back, hearts pounding in their chests as they struggled to comprehend the horror before them. It was unlike anything they had ever encountered. Its body was a nightmarish amalgamation of features, sharp claws glinting in the low light, and a mouth filled with jagged teeth that seemed to stretch impossibly wide. The whispers grew louder, merging with the creature's growl, creating a cacophony of fear that threatened to overwhelm them. Run! Alara screamed, and the crew scrambled back toward the wreckage, desperation fueling their flight. The creature lunged, its movements swift and predatory, but Alara managed to grab Mia just in time, pulling her back as the creature's claws sliced through the air where they had just stood. They reached the barricade, quickly scrambling over the debris, but the creature was relentless. It clawed at the makeshift barriers, tearing through the wood and metal as if they were paper. Alara felt a surge of panic as she grabbed a makeshift weapon, a jagged piece of metal, preparing to defend her crew. Stay behind me, she shouted, raising the weapon as the creature broke through the barricade, its hollow eyes locking onto her. The growl morphed into a roar, echoing through the clearing, and Alara felt the ground shake beneath their feet. With a primal scream, she lunged at the creature, swinging the metal shard with all her strength. It connected with the creature's shoulder, and a sickening squelch echoed in the air. The alien recoiled, letting out a shriek that sent chills down her spine. But it was only momentary. The creature seemed unfazed, its gaze more predatory than ever. Javier and Mia joined her, throwing anything they could find, rocks, debris, at the beast in a desperate attempt to fend it off. The creature stumbled back but quickly regained its balance, its eyes narrowing with an unsettling intelligence. Keep fighting, Alara shouted, her voice hoarse, as they continued to attack. But as they pressed forward, they realized the creature was not alone. Shadows emerged from the darkness, more figures joining the first, their elongated forms gliding through the trees with eerie precision. Panic surged through the crew, and Alara felt the walls of her resolve begin to crumble. "Fall back," she ordered, retreating deeper into the wreckage. They fought against the tide of fear, but the aliens were relentless, their growls merging into a dreadful symphony that echoed through the night. Alara's heart raced as she scrambled to find a way to escape, her mind racing with possibilities. "Climb," she shouted suddenly, pointing toward the remains of the ship. They scrambled up the twisted metal, adrenaline fueling their movements. The aliens clawed at their heels, but Alara felt a surge of hope as they reached the higher ground, taking refuge on a ledge. From their vantage point, they could see the creatures more clearly, a horde of nightmarish figures, each one a grotesque reflection of the others. They moved with a fluidity that defied logic, their hollow eyes scanning the area, searching for their prey. "What do we do now?" Mia gasped, her voice trembling as she clung to Alara's side. The fear in her eyes mirrored the dread that gripped the rest of the crew. "We wait," Alara replied, her mind racing. They had bought themselves a moment, but it wouldn't last long. The creatures prowled below, their growls filling the air with a sense of impending doom. As the minutes stretched into what felt like hours, Alara's thoughts turned to strategy. They couldn't stay here indefinitely. The aliens would find a way to reach them. "We need to create a diversion," she finally said, her voice steadying. "Something to draw them away." Javier nodded, his expression grim but determined. "If we create a loud noise, maybe we can lure them away from the camp," he suggested. "But we'll need to move fast." "Let's gather whatever we can find," Alara instructed, her mind racing with possibilities. "We'll set it up on the opposite side of the camp. When they go after the noise, we make our escape." With a renewed sense of purpose, the crew began to gather materials. Old equipment, scraps of metal, anything that could create a distraction. As they worked, the growls of the aliens reverberated through the trees, a constant reminder of the danger that lurked just beyond their sight. Finally, they created a pile of debris that would serve as their diversion. "Once we set this off, we need to move quickly," Alara warned, her heart pounding. "We can't let them see us escape." With the makeshift explosive ready, they carefully maneuvered to the edge of their perch, ready to set their plan into motion. Alara's mind raced with the risks, but there was no turning back now. They had to act. "On my count," she said, taking a deep breath. 1, 2, 3. With a swift motion, she lit the fuse and watched as the flames ignited, sending sparks into the air. The explosion echoed through the forest, a deafening roar that shattered the silence. The aliens immediately turned, their growls morphing into frantic screeches as they charged toward the noise. "Now!" Alara shouted, and the crew scrambled down the wreckage, adrenaline surging as they raced toward the trees, their hearts pounding in their chests. They ran as fast as they could, the sounds of chaos behind them serving as motivation to push harder. The forest closed in around them, the shadows shifting and twisting, but they didn't look back. They had to reach safety. Alara led the way, her instincts guiding her through the dense foliage. As they sprinted deeper into the forest, the growls of the aliens faded into the distance, replaced by the sound of their own ragged breaths. They pushed forward, determined to escape the nightmare that had consumed them. After what felt like an eternity of running, they finally stumbled upon a small clearing, a fragile sense of safety washing over them. The tension in Alara's shoulders began to ease as they slowed to catch their breath. "What now?" Mia panted, her eyes wide with fear. The adrenaline was fading, and the reality of their situation began to set in. They had escaped the immediate danger, but the weight of their experiences hung heavy in the air. "We need to regroup and come up with a plan," Alara said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling within her. "We can't let fear control us. We need to find a way to survive." But as they huddled together, the shadows of X-19 loomed over them, a constant reminder that they were not alone. The whispers returned, echoing through the trees, a haunting melody that promised more horrors to come. The crew had narrowly escaped their first encounter with the alien presence, but the true fight for survival was only just beginning. As the darkness closed in around them, Alara knew they had to confront the reality of their situation. The hunt had begun, and they were the prey. Chapter 3. The hunt begins. The air in the forest of X-19 felt thick with tension, the oppressive silence punctuated only by the distant rustling of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig. After their harrowing encounter with the alien creatures, the remaining crew of the Prometheus found themselves in a fragile state of survival, each member grappling with the weight of their experiences. Alara Voss, the captain, stood at the forefront, her resolve hardened by the night's events but her heart heavy with the burden of leadership. As dawn broke, a pale light filtered through the dense canopy, casting a surreal glow over the landscape. The vibrant colors of the bioluminescent flora faded into muted greens and browns, a reminder that they were in an alien world where danger lurked at every turn. Alara gathered her crew, their faces drawn and weary, haunted by the memories of their narrow escape. "We need to establish a plan," she said, her voice steady. "We can't keep running in fear. If we're going to survive, we need to understand what we're up against." The crew nodded, their expressions a mix of determination and dread. They had seen the horrors of the night before, and the shadows that danced at the edge of their vision were a constant reminder of the threat they faced. Javier, the ship's engineer, stepped forward, his brow furrowed in thought. "We need to find a way to fortify our camp. The barricades we built won't hold if those creatures come back." Alara agreed, her mind racing with possibilities. They needed to turn their fear into action, to reclaim their sense of agency. As they set to work, the crew scavenged through the wreckage of the Prometheus, gathering supplies to reinforce their makeshift camp. Alara felt a surge of pride as she watched them work together, their shared resolve binding them closer. They fashioned weapons from scraps of metal, honing jagged edges to create makeshift knives and spears. Each clang of metal against metal was a reminder that they were not merely victims. They were survivors, ready to fight back. Hours passed as they toiled, and the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows that danced across the ground. But Alara could feel the air change, a palpable shift that sent a shiver down her spine. The whispers that had haunted them during the night seemed to grow louder, a symphony of voices that echoed through the trees. She paused, straining to listen, but the sounds faded as quickly as they had come. "Did you hear that?" Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The botanist's eyes were wide, scanning the surrounding trees as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows. Alara nodded, her heart racing. "We need to stay alert." As they finished fortifying their camp, the crew gathered around a makeshift table to discuss their next steps. "We need to find food," Alara said, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy. "We can't rely on what little we have left. We need to venture out and explore." Javier's expression darkened. "And what if those creatures are still out there? We barely escaped last time." The fear in his voice was palpable, and Alara could see the doubt creeping into the eyes of her crew. "I understand the risk," she replied, her voice firm. "But we can't let fear paralyze us. We need to take control of our situation. We will go in pairs, keep watch, and stay within sight of each other." The crew exchanged glances, weighing the risks against the necessity of survival. After a brief discussion, they formed pairs, deciding to split up into groups of two. Alara partnered with Mia, while Javier teamed up with another crew member, a quiet technician named Sam. The tension in the air was thick as they prepared to leave the safety of their camp, each member acutely aware of the dangers that awaited them. As they stepped into the forest, the sounds of the outside world engulfed them. The trees loomed overhead, their twisted branches forming a canopy that filtered the sunlight into eerie patterns on the ground. Alara could feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on her, but she pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. "Stay close," she instructed, her voice steady. Mia nodded, her eyes scanning the underbrush for any signs of danger. The vibrant flora that had seemed so beautiful now felt ominous, a reminder of the deadly creatures that lurked within. As they ventured deeper into the woods, Alara's instincts kicked in. She felt the forest shift around them, the silence becoming oppressive. The occasional rustle of leaves sent her heart racing, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. "Keep an eye out for anything edible," she murmured, trying to maintain a sense of purpose. Mia nodded, her hands brushing against the various plants they passed. "These look familiar," she said, pointing to a cluster of green leaves. "I think they might be edible." Alara watched as Mia carefully examined the foliage, her curiosity momentarily distracting them from the tension that hung in the air. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the trees, followed by the unmistakable sound of something large moving through the underbrush. Alara's heart raced as she turned to Mia, fear etched on her face. "We need to go," she whispered urgently, grabbing Mia's arm as they hurried back toward the camp. But as they turned to flee, a shadow darted across their path, blocking their way. The creature emerged from the underbrush, its elongated limbs moving with terrifying speed. Alara's blood ran cold as she recognized the grotesque figure, its hollow eyes fixed on them with predatory intent. "Run!" she screamed, propelling Mia forward as they sprinted in the opposite direction. The creature lunged after them, its claws slicing through the air with deadly precision. Alara pushed herself harder, her breath coming in ragged gasps as they navigated the twisted terrain. They zigzagged through the trees, desperately trying to evade the creature. Alara could hear its growls growing closer, a chilling reminder of the danger that pursued them. "This way!" Mia shouted, pointing toward a narrow gap between two large boulders. Without hesitation, they dove through the opening, the jagged rocks scraping against their skin. Inside the narrow passage, the darkness enveloped them, and Alara pressed against the cool stone, her heart pounding in her chest. The creature's growls echoed outside, its frustration palpable as it paced back and forth, searching for its prey. Alara could barely breathe, the air thick with fear. "Do you think it can see us?" Mia whispered, her voice trembling. Alara shook her head, straining to listen. The growls faded slightly, but they could still hear the creature's movements just outside their hiding place. "I don't know," Alara replied, her mind racing. "But we can't stay here forever. We need to find a way back to the camp." They waited in tense silence, the sound of the creature moving outside sending chills down their spines. After what felt like an eternity, the growling began to fade, the creature seemingly losing interest. Alara exchanged a glance with Mia, a silent agreement passing between them. They had to make a move. "Let's go," Alara whispered, slowly inching toward the exit. They slipped out of the narrow passage, scanning the area for any signs of danger. The forest felt different. The air was charged with the remnants of fear, but the creature was nowhere to be seen. "Where did it go?" Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alara felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. "We need to get back to the others," she said decisively, her instincts urging her to move. They made their way cautiously through the underbrush, keeping an eye out for any signs of movement. The forest was eerily quiet, the absence of sound amplifying their unease. Alara could feel the weight of the shadows pressing down on them, and every rustle of leaves sent her heart racing. As they approached the clearing where their camp was set up, Alara's heart sank. The remnants of their barricades were scattered, the debris torn apart as if something had ransacked their refuge. "No," she whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. "What happened?" Mia gasped, her eyes wide with horror. Alara's mind raced, trying to piece together what had transpired while they were gone. "We need to find the others," she urged, her voice firm despite the panic threatening to overwhelm her. They moved quickly through the clearing, searching for any signs of life. The camp was eerily silent, the remnants of their makeshift barricades a stark reminder of the chaos that had erupted. "Javier." "Sam," Alara called, her voice trembling as she searched for her crew. No response came, and a sense of dread settled over her. "They must have gone deeper into the forest," she said, her mind racing. "We need to find them before it's too late." The urgency in her voice propelled them forward as they ventured into the trees once more. Alara felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. She couldn't lose anyone else. She wouldn't let fear dictate their fate. As they moved deeper into the forest, the atmosphere shifted once more. The whispers returned, echoing through the trees like a haunting melody, a reminder that they were not alone. "Do you hear that?" Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alara nodded, her heart racing. "Stay close," she instructed, scanning the area for any signs of danger. They moved cautiously, each step laden with trepidation. As they navigated through the underbrush, Alara caught sight of something in the distance, a flicker of movement that sent her heart racing. "This way," she whispered, guiding Mia toward the source of the movement. They crept closer, their hearts pounding in their chests. Suddenly, they stumbled upon a group of figures huddled together, their expressions grim. "Javier!" Alara exclaimed, relief flooding her as she recognized the familiar faces of her crew. But as she drew closer, she could see the fear etched on their features. "What happened?" she demanded, her voice urgent. Javier looked up, his eyes wide with terror. "They attacked us," he said, his voice trembling. "We barely made it out." "Where are the others?" Alara asked, her heart sinking as she realized the implications. "Sam didn't make it. We lost him in the chaos," Javier replied, his voice breaking. Alara felt a wave of sorrow wash over her, the weight of their losses pressing down on her. We need to regroup, she said, forcing herself to remain strong. We can't let this break us. The crew nodded, their eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination as they prepared to face the horrors that awaited them. As they discussed their next steps, the whispers grew louder, wrapping around them like a shroud. Alara could feel the darkness closing in, the shadows stretching toward them as if eager to consume them whole. We need to find a place to hide, she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her insides. We can't stay exposed like this. They moved quickly, retracing their steps back into the forest, the oppressive weight of the shadows following them. As they ventured deeper into the trees, Alara felt a sense of urgency driving her forward. They needed to find safety, a place where they could regroup and plan their next move. After a harrowing trek through the underbrush, they stumbled upon a small cave nestled between two large boulders. This could work, Alara said, peering into the darkness. It's concealed and offers some protection. The crew nodded in agreement, relief washing over them as they entered the cave. Inside, the air was cool and damp, the darkness wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. Alara took a moment to collect her thoughts, her heart still racing from the chaos they had just endured. They huddled together, their faces illuminated by the flickering light of a small fire they managed to start. Let's take a moment to breathe, Alara said, her voice steady. We need to regroup and figure out our next steps. The crew nodded, exhaustion etched on their features as they sat in a circle, the warmth of the fire providing a sense of comfort amidst the chaos. As they shared their experiences, the reality of their situation began to sink in. They were stranded on a hostile planet, hunted by creatures that thrived on fear and chaos. Each member of the crew carried the weight of their losses, but in that moment, they also found solace in one another. Alara could see the determination in their eyes, a flicker of hope amidst the despair. We can't let this defeat us, she said, her voice strong. We need to fight back, to reclaim our lives. The crew nodded, their resolve hardening as they prepared to face the darkness together. As the fire crackled and the shadows danced on the cave walls, Alara knew that the true test of their strength was yet to come. The hunt had begun, and they were not just prey. They were survivors, ready to confront the horrors that awaited them. In that moment, amidst the darkness, they found a glimmer of hope. Together, they would face whatever lay ahead. Chapter 4. The Revelation. The cave was a fragile sanctuary, a temporary refuge from the chaos that had engulfed the crew of the Prometheus. Shadows flickered on the damp walls as the fire crackled, its warmth a feeble barrier against the encroaching darkness outside. Each member of the crew sat in silence, the weight of their situation pressing down on them. Alara Voss, the captain, felt the burden of leadership heavier than ever as she looked around at the faces illuminated by the firelight. Javier, Mia, and the others were weary, their eyes haunted by the horrors they had witnessed. They had lost Sam, one of their own, and the reality of their isolation began to settle in like a thick fog. Alara took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. They needed to regroup, to find a way to turn their fear into determination. We've faced unimaginable terror, Alara began, her voice steady despite the tremor of anxiety beneath. But we're still here. We're still alive. We need to make a plan. The crew nodded, their expressions a mix of fear and determination, and she felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. We need to find out more about these creatures, she continued. Understanding what we're up against is our best chance for survival. Javier, who had been silent until now, shifted in his seat, his brow furrowed in thought. But how? We barely escaped the last time we encountered them. Alara met his gaze, her mind racing with possibilities. We need to observe them from a distance. Find a way to gather information without putting ourselves in danger. The crew exchanged glances, the tension palpable as they considered the risks involved. But deep down, they knew that doing nothing was not an option. After a brief discussion, they devised a plan. The crew would split into pairs once more, but this time, they would focus on reconnaissance. They would scout the surrounding area, looking for signs of the aliens and gathering any information they could find about their behaviors and patterns. The shadows of doubt lingered, but the sense of purpose began to overshadow their fear. As dawn broke, Alara and Mia prepared to set out. The light filtered through the trees, casting elongated shadows across the forest floor. The air was cool, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat of the previous day. Alara felt a mixture of apprehension and resolve as they stepped outside the cave, the forest stretching out before them like an uncharted territory. "Stay close," Alara reminded Mia, her voice steady. "We need to be cautious." They moved slowly, the sounds of the forest coming alive around them. Birds chirped in the distance, but the unnerving silence that followed reminded Alara of the lurking danger. Each rustle of leaves sent her heart racing, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the vibrant colors of the flora began to fade, replaced by an unsettling gray-green hue that felt foreboding. They stumbled upon a clearing, the remnants of an ancient civilization peeking through the underbrush. Stone structures, weathered and crumbling, stood like ghosts from a forgotten time. "Mia, look at this," Alara said, her voice filled with awe as she approached one of the carvings. The surface was covered in intricate designs, symbols that seemed to tell a story of a once thriving culture. "This could provide us with some insight into what happened here." Mia joined her, tracing her fingers over the carvings. "These look like hieroglyphs," she mused. "They might depict the creatures we encountered." Alara studied the symbols, a chill running down her spine as she realized that the depictions were eerily similar to the aliens they had faced. As they examined the carvings, a low growl echoed through the trees, sending a shiver down Alara's spine. "We should move," she whispered urgently, her instincts kicking in. They knew all too well the danger that lurked in the shadows. They retreated from the clearing, their hearts pounding as they navigated through the underbrush. The growling grew louder, more insistent, and Alara felt the weight of fear settle over them like a shroud. "We need to find a place to hide," she said, her voice steady despite the rising panic. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the trees, tall and skeletal, a grotesque silhouette against the dim light. Alara's breath hitched in her throat as she recognized the creature. It lunged toward them, its claws glinting in the light, and she instinctively grabbed Mia's arm, pulling her back as they sprinted deeper into the forest. The creature pursued them with terrifying speed, its growls echoing through the trees. Alara's heart raced as they navigated the twisted terrain, adrenaline fueling their flight. "This way," she shouted, spotting a narrow gap between two boulders. They squeezed through, the rough stones scraping against their skin as they pressed against the cool rock. Inside the narrow passage, the darkness enveloped them, and Alara strained to listen for the creature outside. Its growls echoed, a chilling reminder of the danger that lurked just beyond their hiding place. They waited in silence, their breaths shallow and fast. After what felt like an eternity, the growling began to fade, and Alara dared to peek outside. The creature had moved on, its presence replaced by an eerie stillness that filled the air. "We need to get back to the cave," Alara said, her voice trembling. "We can't risk being caught out here." They slipped out of the passage, cautiously making their way back through the forest, the shadows stretching ominously around them. As they moved, Alara felt a sense of urgency driving her forward. They had to warn the others, to regroup and strategize for what lay ahead. When they finally reached the cave, the crew was already gathered, their faces etched with concern. "What happened?" Javier asked, his eyes widening as he took in their pale expressions. Alara quickly relayed their encounter, the urgency in her voice palpable. "We need to prepare for another attack. They're hunting us, and we can't let our guard down." As they discussed their findings, Alara felt a flicker of hope. They had gathered valuable information, and it was time to turn their fear into action. "We need to use the carvings as a guide," she said, pointing to the sketches Mia had made of the symbols. They could provide insight into the creature's behavior and weaknesses. Javier nodded, his brow furrowing in thought. "If we can understand their patterns, we might be able to devise a strategy to fight back." The crew rallied around the idea, a sense of purpose igniting within them. They spent the next few hours analyzing the carvings, piecing together the story of the ancient civilization. Alara felt a sense of urgency as they uncovered clues about the aliens' life cycle, how they hunted, how they communicated, and how they had once terrorized the inhabitants of this world. The carvings depicted not only the creatures, but also the struggle of the civilization that had tried to fight back. As night fell, they gathered around the fire, the flickering light casting dancing shadows on the walls of the cave. The atmosphere was thick with tension, but there was also a sense of determination that had begun to take root. They were no longer just survivors, they were warriors, ready to confront the darkness. "We need to set traps," Alara proposed, her voice steady. "We can use their behaviors against them." If we can lure them into a controlled area, we might stand a chance. The crew nodded, their eyes filled with renewed purpose as they began discussing ideas for the traps. As they planned, the whispers returned, echoing through the cave, a haunting reminder of the danger that lurked just outside. Alara felt a chill run down her spine, but she pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. They had a plan, and they were determined to execute it. Hours passed, the crew working tirelessly to prepare for their confrontation with the aliens. They constructed traps using the debris from the wreckage, creating makeshift snares and barriers designed to ensnare their foes. Alara felt a sense of pride as she watched them work together, their fear transforming into a shared sense of purpose. As dawn approached, they finalized their preparations, the air thick with anticipation. "This is it," Alara said, her voice steady as she addressed the crew. "We need to stick to the plan. If we can lure them in, we'll have a chance to fight back." The crew nodded, determination etched on their faces as they took their positions. With the first light of day breaking through the trees, Alara felt a surge of adrenaline. They had created a perimeter around the cave, with traps set to ensnare any creature that dared to approach. The forest felt alive with anticipation, the quiet before the storm hanging heavy in the air. As they waited, Alara kept a watchful eye on the surroundings, her heart racing with every sound. The tension was palpable, and she could feel the weight of fear mixed with hope. They had come too far to turn back now. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees, sending a jolt of adrenaline through Alara's veins. "Get ready," she hissed, her heart pounding. The crew tensed, gripping their makeshift weapons as they prepared for the inevitable confrontation. From the shadows, the first creature emerged, its elongated limbs moving with predatory grace. The growl intensified, echoing through the forest as it stalked closer. Alara could feel her pulse quickening, fear curling in her stomach, but she forced herself to remain steady. "Now!" she shouted, and the crew sprang into action, baiting the traps and preparing to fight back. The creature lunged forward, its claws glinting in the light, but just as it reached the perimeter, it was ensnared by one of their traps, a net of twisted metal and rope that had been expertly crafted. The alien screeched, thrashing against the snare, its hollow eyes wide with rage. Alara's heart raced as she and the crew surged forward, their makeshift weapons raised. "Don't let it get away," she shouted, adrenaline coursing through her veins as they closed in on the creature. They fought with a fierce determination, pushing against their fear as they struck at the alien, each blow fueled by the memories of their fallen comrades. The creature's growls filled the air, a haunting sound that echoed through the trees, but they pressed on, refusing to back down. As the creature finally fell silent, they stepped back, breathless and trembling, the weight of what they had accomplished settling over them. They had faced the darkness, confronted their fears, and emerged victorious, at least for now. But as they stood in the clearing, the realization of what they had done began to sink in. They had only scratched the surface of the nightmare that awaited them. The forest felt alive with the promise of more creatures lurking in the shadows, and the whispers grew louder, a haunting reminder that the hunt was far from over. Alara turned to her crew, their faces illuminated by the fading light. "We need to be prepared for what's next," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. They had taken a step toward reclaiming their lives, but the battle was just beginning. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest transformed into a realm of shadows, and Alara knew that the true fight for survival had only just begun. The darkness loomed around them, a constant reminder of the horrors they faced, but she felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Chapter 5. The Final Stand. The night descended upon X-19 like a shroud, wrapping the forest in velvety darkness. The air was thick with tension, a palpable energy that crackled with every rustle of leaves and distant whisper. Alara Voss stood at the threshold of their cave, her heart pounding in her chest as she surveyed the shadows that danced just beyond the reach of their flickering firelight. They had faced their first major confrontation with the alien creatures and emerged victorious, but the taste of triumph was bittersweet. They had merely roused a sleeping beast. The crew of the Prometheus gathered around the fire, their faces illuminated by the orange glow. Exhaustion hung over them like a heavy fog, but the flicker of determination remained in their eyes. They had taken a life, a significant step in their fight for survival, but Alara knew that it meant the others would come. They had only scratched the surface of the danger that lurked in the shadows. "Tonight, we prepare for what's to come," Ilara said, her voice steady as she addressed her crew. "We've shown that we can fight back, but we need to be ready for their retaliation. They won't take this lightly." The crew nodded, their expressions serious as they considered the challenge ahead. Javier, the ship's engineer, stepped forward, his brow furrowed in thought. "We need to reinforce our traps and set up sentries. We can't afford to be caught off guard again." The others murmured in agreement, the urgency of the situation settling over them like a heavy weight. As they set about their preparations, Ilara felt a surge of pride. They were no longer just a group of individuals struggling to survive. They had become a cohesive unit, bound by shared experiences and a common goal. Each member brought their strengths to the table, and together, they formed a formidable force against the darkness that threatened to consume them. The hours slipped by as they worked in the dim light, reinforcing their barricades and laying traps around the perimeter of the cave. The forest felt alive, the whispers swirling around them, taunting them with the promise of danger. Ilara's instincts were on high alert, every sound sending a jolt of adrenaline through her veins. As night deepened, they gathered around the fire once more, the warmth a temporary comfort against the chill that crept in from the outside. Ilara looked at her crew, their faces weary but resolute. "We need to rest," she said, knowing that they would need their strength for the trials ahead. "We'll take turns keeping watch." The crew settled into a restless slumber, the fire crackling softly as the shadows flickered around them. Ilara lay awake, her mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her, the lives of her crew resting on her shoulders. The darkness felt oppressive, a constant reminder of the dangers that lurked just beyond their sight. In the early hours of the morning, Ilara was jolted from her thoughts by a chilling sound, a guttural growl echoing through the forest. Her heart raced as she shot up, adrenaline surging through her body. "Everyone wake up!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the stillness. The crew stirred, fear etched on their faces as they scrambled to their feet. "Check the perimeter," Ilara ordered, her instincts kicking into high gear. They rushed to their positions, the air electric with tension as they prepared for the confrontation they had anticipated. The growling grew louder, reverberating through the trees, a haunting reminder that they were not alone. From the shadows, a figure emerged, sleek and menacing. The alien creature moved with an unnatural grace, its hollow eyes scanning the area as it approached. Ilara felt a surge of fear but steeled herself, her resolve hardening at the sight of the beast. "Get ready," she shouted, her voice steady as she raised her weapon. The crew formed a barrier, their makeshift weapons raised as they prepared to defend their camp. The alien lunged forward, its claws glinting in the dim light, but they were ready. As it neared the perimeter, they activated the traps they had set, the snares springing to life and ensnaring the creature in a net of twisted metal and rope. The alien shrieked, thrashing against the snare, its hollow eyes wide with fury. "Now!" Ilara shouted, and the crew surged forward, charging at the creature with a fierce determination. They struck with all their might, each blow fueled by the memories of their fallen comrades and the fear that had haunted them for days. The battle was chaotic, filled with the sounds of growls and shouts, the air thick with desperation. The alien fought back, its movements powerful and unpredictable, but Ilara could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins, urging her to push harder. They couldn't let fear take hold. They had to reclaim their lives. As they fought, Ilara noticed movement in the shadows, more creatures emerging from the darkness, drawn by the sounds of the struggle. Panic surged through her as she realized they were vastly outnumbered. "We need to fall back," she shouted, her heart racing as she scanned the area for an escape route. "Retreat to the cave," Javier called, urging the crew to regroup. They fought their way back, pushing against the creatures as they moved toward the sanctuary of the cave. Ilara felt the weight of fear settle over them, but she refused to let it consume her. They reached the entrance of the cave, scrambling inside just as the first alien lunged forward, narrowly missing them. Ilara quickly grabbed a heavy rock and wedged it against the entrance, trying to block the creatures from following them inside. The growls echoed outside, a haunting reminder of the danger that lurked just beyond their reach. Inside the cave, they regrouped, panting and wide-eyed. "What do we do now?" Mia gasped, her voice trembling. Ilara could see the fear etched on the faces of her crew, but she knew they couldn't give in to despair. "We need to fortify our position," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos outside. "We can't let them breach the cave. We'll need to use everything we have." The crew nodded, determination shining in their eyes as they prepared for the fight of their lives. They worked quickly, reinforcing the entrance with debris and rocks, creating a barricade that would hopefully hold against the creatures. The growling outside grew louder, the sound reverberating through the cave, sending chills down Alara's spine. She felt the weight of anxiety settle over her, but she pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. As they finished fortifying the entrance, Alara gathered the crew in a circle, her heart racing with urgency. "We need to act fast," she said, her voice steady. "If we don't stop them, they'll overwhelm us. We need a plan to fight back." Javier stepped forward, his brow furrowed in thought. "We could create distractions, draw them away from the cave. If we can split their numbers, we might stand a chance." The others nodded, the idea sparking a flicker of hope amidst the darkness. "Let's use the traps we set earlier," Alara suggested. "If we can lure them away, we can pick them off one by one." The crew rallied around the idea, a renewed sense of purpose igniting within them. They had faced darkness before, and they would do so again. As they prepared for their plan, the growling outside intensified, the creatures restless, eager to breach the cave. Alara felt a surge of determination. They had come too far to let fear dictate their fate. "Let's move," she shouted, leading the crew toward the entrance. They carefully opened the barricade, peering outside into the darkness. The growls echoed ominously, but they couldn't see the creatures lurking just beyond the shadows. With a deep breath, Alara stepped outside, her heart racing. "Now!" she called, and the crew quickly followed, setting off the traps they had prepared. The sound of metal clanging against metal echoed through the trees, drawing the attention of the lurking aliens. As the creatures turned toward the noise, Alara and her crew sprang into action, using the chaos to their advantage. They struck with precision and determination, each blow fueled by the memories of their fallen comrades and the fierce desire to survive. The battle raged on, the air thick with adrenaline as they fought against the tide of darkness. Alara felt the weight of fear pressing down on her, but she pushed through, her instincts guiding her as she moved with her crew. They were a force to be reckoned with, united in their fight against the terror that had invaded their lives. As they battled the aliens, Alara noticed the tide shifting. The creatures were relentless, but they were also disoriented, drawn into the chaos of the traps and the noise. They had managed to split their numbers, and with each creature that fell, a sense of hope ignited within her. But just as they began to feel a sense of victory, a familiar growl echoed through the trees, more powerful and menacing than before. Alara turned to see a larger creature emerge from the shadows, its eyes glowing with a predatory intensity. It moved with an unsettling grace, an embodiment of the darkness they had fought so hard to escape. "Fall back!" Alara shouted, her heart racing as panic surged through her. The crew scrambled to retreat, but the creature lunged forward, its claws slicing through the air with deadly precision. Alara felt a surge of fear, but she refused to let it consume her. "We need to regroup," she urged, her voice steady as she led the crew back toward the cave. As they reached the entrance, the larger creature followed, its growl echoing through the night. Alara quickly slammed the barricade shut, her heart pounding in her chest as she pressed her back against the door. "We can't let it in," she shouted, urgency coloring her voice. The creature clawed at the entrance, the sound reverberating through the cave, sending chills down their spines. It was relentless, a force of nature determined to breach their sanctuary. "We need to find a way to stop it," Javier shouted, panic creeping into his voice. Alara felt a surge of desperation. They had come too far to let fear win now. "We need to create a diversion," she said, her mind racing with possibilities. "If we can draw it away from the entrance, we might stand a chance." Mia nodded, her eyes wide with determination. "I can use the bioluminescent plants to create a distraction," she suggested. "If we can lure it away, we might be able to escape." Alara felt a flicker of hope ignite within her as she considered the plan. "Let's do it," she said, her voice steady. "We'll create a diversion and make our move." The crew quickly gathered materials, setting up the bioluminescent plants to create a glowing trail that would lead the creature away from the cave. As they worked, the creature continued to claw at the entrance, its growls echoing through the cave, a chilling reminder of the danger they faced. Alara felt her heart race, the weight of fear pressing down on her, but she refused to let it consume her. They had fought too hard to give up now. With the distraction set in place, they prepared to execute their plan. "On my count," Alara said, her voice steady. 1, 2, 3. They activated the bioluminescent plants, the glowing trail illuminating the path into the darkness. The creature paused, its growls shifting as it turned toward the light. "Now!" Alara shouted, and the crew surged forward, pushing through the barricade and sprinting into the night. They raced through the forest, heart pounding as they followed the glowing trail. The creature was close behind, its growls echoing in the darkness, but they pressed on, fueled by adrenaline and the fierce desire to survive. As they navigated the twisting terrain, Alara felt the weight of fear lift slightly. They had managed to outsmart the creature, at least for now. But they couldn't let their guard down. The darkness was still alive with danger. They reached a clearing, the bioluminescent plants illuminating the area with an otherworldly glow. Alara turned to her crew, their faces reflecting a mix of fear and determination. "We need to regroup and plan our next move," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. As they caught their breath, Alara felt a sense of urgency wash over her. They had faced the darkness before, but they needed to be prepared for whatever lay ahead. "We need to find a way to destroy the hive," she said, her heart racing. "If we can eliminate the source of their power, we may stand a chance." Javier nodded, his brow furrowed in thought. "But how do we do that? We've already seen how powerful they are." The others exchanged glances, the weight of the challenge settling over them. Alara's mind raced with possibilities. "We need to gather more information about their hive. If we can locate it, we can devise a plan to destroy it." The crew rallied around the idea, determination igniting within them once more. As they prepared to move, the whispers returned, echoing through the trees, a haunting melody that promised more horrors to come. Alara felt a chill run down her spine, but she pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. They had faced darkness before, and they would do so again. With renewed purpose, they ventured deeper into the forest, their senses heightened as they navigated the twisted terrain. The shadows loomed around them, and every rustle sent a jolt of adrenaline through their veins. They needed to find the hive, to confront the source of the terror that had invaded their lives. As they moved, they stumbled upon a series of tunnels carved into the earth, the entrance shrouded in darkness. "This could be it," Alara said, her heart racing as she peered into the depths. The air felt charged with an unsettling energy, and she could sense the danger that lurked within. "We need to be careful," Mia warned, her voice trembling. Alara nodded, her instincts kicking in as they prepared to enter the tunnels. They were stepping into the heart of the beast, and she could feel the weight of fear pressing down on her. As they descended into the darkness, the air grew colder, the shadows wrapping around them like a shroud. The whispers intensified, echoing in their ears, a haunting reminder of the danger that awaited them. Alara's heart raced as they navigated through the winding tunnels, each step laden with trepidation. Finally, they reached a chamber, the walls pulsating with an eerie glow. The hive was unlike anything they had encountered, a grotesque structure teeming with life. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and Alara felt a wave of nausea wash over her as she surveyed the scene. "This is it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The hive pulsed with an otherworldly energy, and she could sense the creatures lurking within, their presence a constant reminder of the danger that surrounded them. "We need to destroy it," Alara urged, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her insides. "It's the only way to stop them." The crew nodded, their expressions filled with determination as they prepared to confront the hive. As they moved closer, the whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices that echoed through the chamber. Alara felt a surge of fear but pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. They had come too far to turn back now. With a deep breath, Alara raised her weapon, ready to strike. "On my count," she said, her heart racing. 1, 2, 3. They charged forward, unleashing their fury on the hive, striking with all their might. The chamber erupted into chaos, the air thick with the sounds of battle. The creatures emerged from the hive, their growls echoing through the chamber as they fought back. Alara felt a surge of adrenaline as they pressed on, refusing to back down. As the battle raged, Alara could see the hive beginning to crack under the pressure of their assault. The walls trembled, and a sense of hope ignited within her. They were making progress. They could destroy the source of the terror that had invaded their lives. But just as victory seemed within reach, a massive creature emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing with an intense fury. It lunged toward them, its claws slicing through the air with deadly precision. Alara's heart raced as she realized they were facing the true embodiment of their nightmares. "Fall back!" she shouted, urgency coloring her voice as they scrambled to regroup. The creature fought with a ferocity that was overwhelming, and Alara felt a surge of fear as they struggled to hold their ground. They fought valiantly, each member of the crew pushing against the tide of darkness, refusing to let fear consume them. Alara felt a surge of determination as she struck at the creature, each blow fueled by the memories of their fallen comrades and the fierce desire to survive. As the battle raged on, the hive continued to crack, and Alara could see the light of victory flickering just beyond reach. They had come too far to let fear dictate their fate. They were warriors, ready to confront the darkness that threatened to consume them. With one final push, they struck at the heart of the hive, their combined strength breaking through the barriers that had held them captive for so long. The chamber erupted in a blinding light as the hive shattered, the creatures shrieking as they were consumed by the chaos. In the aftermath, Alara stood amidst the wreckage, her heart racing as she surveyed the devastation. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but the cost had been high. The weight of their losses settled over her like a shroud, a reminder of the sacrifices they had made. As they gathered together, the crew exchanged weary smiles, a flicker of hope igniting within them. They had fought against the darkness and reclaimed their lives, but the scars of their experiences would remain etched in their hearts forever. In that moment, Alara knew that the true fight for survival had only just begun. The darkness would always linger, a constant reminder of the horrors they had faced. But together, they had forged a bond that would carry them through whatever lay ahead. As they emerged from the tunnels, the first light of dawn broke through the trees, illuminating the forest with a soft glow. The shadows began to recede, and Alara felt a sense of peace wash over her. They had faced their fears and emerged stronger. Together, they would navigate the challenges that lay ahead, ready to confront whatever darkness awaited them. The journey was far from over, but they had taken their first step toward reclaiming their lives. And in that moment, amidst the remnants of the past, they found hope, a glimmer of light in the face of overwhelming darkness. Thank you for listening. We truly appreciate your time and interest in our story. If you enjoyed this narrative, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your support not only helps us reach a wider audience, but also motivates us to continue creating engaging content. We are committed to bringing you more captivating stories that explore thrilling adventures, intriguing characters, and imaginative worlds. By subscribing, you'll be the first to know about new releases and updates, ensuring you won't miss out on any of our future tales. We look forward to sharing more exciting journeys with you soon. Your feedback is invaluable to us, so feel free to share your thoughts and suggestions. Thank you once again for being part of our storytelling community.